Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Friday, September 25th, 2020, and today I'm going to be talking about Donald Trump removing advertisements in all the key battleground states except for 3. Now, those 3 states may be a little shocking, but it is expected. These are battleground states Donald Trump carried 4 years ago. With the fact that he has withdrawn ads in the television part of the campaign is pretty substantial, considering that many voters do watch the television, they watch the news, and when they get localized ads, it seems to be as if the candidate is reaching out to these voters. Now, one thing that Hillary Clinton really messed up in back in 2016 was her disconnect with the voters. She was unable to appeal to these Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan voters. Now, the Democratic Party spent tens of millions of dollars in Pennsylvania, but didn't even hit 10 million in Michigan and much less 5 million in Wisconsin. All 3 of those states went to Donald Trump in 2016. Now the Democratic Party is looking to win back those states, among others, and possibly flip states that haven't gone to the Democratic Party in decades. Arizona, Georgia, and Texas. These are 3 battleground states that the Democratic Party hasn't carried since the 90s or even back in the 70s for the state of Texas. So the Democratic Party is looking for an opportunity this year in order to win over some key battleground states, and it doesn't look like Donald Trump is doing too well in terms of his advertising. So what does advertising pretty much give us an idea of? Well, it's generally how much money a campaign has. As Bloomberg reports, and they typically get this scoop very early, President Trump has canceled ad buys in a number of key battleground states. He's pulled back on television ads in all but 3 states where the race is close. Now, surprisingly, Arizona has made it back on the list, and Florida and Georgia have pretty much always been on there. But his ads have disappeared from Ohio and Iowa, and the Biden campaign just raised so much money following Justin Ginsburg's passing, and ActBlue itself has raised over $250 million in the last week. In 1 week, the Democratic Party hit a record with over $400 million raised in August, but in 1 week, the Democratic Party has raised more than half of that. So the Democratic Party is going into this race with a lot of money. They're entering into the final 40 days of the election. I don't know why this isn't quitting. With a lot of money. Just ignore it if it pops up in the future. And they're spending it at a much lower rate than President Trump's election campaign. Now, yes, Hillary Clinton did have a lead in terms of fundraising, but this time the Democratic Party is not making the same mistakes they made 4 years ago. They're actually spending it in key states. Now, this is the electoral map based off polls today, based off where Biden is leading and where Trump is leading. You can see why it's so significant that while Trump may be targeting 33 electoral votes, he's still underwater in a remaining state out of the states that he carried in 2016, 10, 26, 46, 61, 90, 108 electoral votes, 109, 110 electoral votes from districts and states he carried 4 years ago. So while these 33 target states, if they do end up going for Donald Trump, good for him, but it doesn't even put him close to where he needs to be in order to win the election, because right now Biden is up by over 5% in Wisconsin, in Michigan, around 5% in Pennsylvania, up to 3% in Maine's 2nd district, in Nebraska's 2nd district, and up 1-2% in Ohio, in North Carolina, and Florida. And get this, he's up by 3% in Arizona as well. So realistically, the Trump campaign might be more inclined to focus on some other battleground states. And the fact that Biden is going to be outspending President Trump in the remaining time before the election, early voting has already begun in battleground states such as North Carolina, and a number of other states are going to start opening up their in-person voting, which means the Democratic Party, if they are maintaining their lead throughout the next couple of weeks and it's not narrowing up, we can expect a lot of those people who are going to either be voting early or going to be submitting a ballot through the mail early and submitting it. Well, there's just no way to go to the election official and say, I want my ballot back. They're going to be able to cast their ballot early, and it will go to Joe Biden, which is exactly why it's very bad for Donald Trump that North Carolina has not shown him up on the overall average in quite some time now, neither as a Senate race or the governor's race for the Republicans there. So the Democratic Party should be pretty okay with the fact that they are leading in some of these battleground states right now, and I don't think Donald Trump should be wasting money in Georgia or Iowa. Now, Iowa actually has a real possibility of going to Biden, so actually I'm going to retract that statement, but for Georgia, I still think that Trump is the favorite. But also, even if Trump was to target some of these blue states, you forget that he has also withdrawn ads from some of these red states, states that have shown to us that they have the possibility of flipping this election season. Now, the only state, surprisingly, on this map is Texas, but there are some states that are still a little bit more competitive that the Republican Party needs Trump to run up the numbers in. He should be, if he was if he had the amount of money that the Biden campaign did. I mean, they out fundraised him by over $100 million last month. But if they had his money, I would say throw money at Montana, throw money at Alaska, throw money at South Carolina. Why? Because there are competitive races there. And these Republicans are going to be severely underperforming President Trump. So if Trump wins by 19 and they win by 9, all good. But if Trump only wins by 9 and the Democrat wins by 0.5, well, obviously not all good. The Democrat is leading in Montana's House race. They're doing very well in the governor's race and the Senate race. And Trump is only up 7% in that state, in a state he carried by 21% in 2016. Seriously, in Alaska, the Democratic Party is competitive in the House race and the Senate race, and Donald Trump is only up by single digits in the presidential race. In Texas, this is a state where the Senate race actually isn't more competitive than the presidential race, but I will say that President Trump is only up by a narrow margin in Texas, a state that he was up by 12% on election day. If you want to see the actual numbers, Trump is only up by 1.9% today. 1.9%. And if we look at South Carolina, very, very competitive Senate race. Lindsey Graham's comments, they're killing him financially. Quite literally, I mean, we're looking at Jamie Harrison raising numbers that we have never seen before for a South Carolina candidate. And he's on track to raise $1/10 billion for this election, according to Lindsey Graham. So he's worried in that state. So while Trump may not be losing in these states, these Senate candidates might actually be. And the presidential race has narrowed up in Texas specifically, which is 38 electoral votes. So yes, Donald Trump will likely carry some of these electoral votes out of these 342. The election is possibly going to get narrower in some of these battleground states, but President Trump keeping ads in only 3 states, 33 electoral votes in total. You have to ask the question, are you kidding me? I mean, is this the best the president can put forth? Now, I understand he does have internet ads. I completely understand that. That worked for him in 2016, but not entirely. I mean, he can't just be giving up ads week after week, because when I first made my video with a very similar title to this one, we were talking about Michigan. And, the Republican Party was saying, oh, he'll come back to Michigan, or it's just Michigan. It's just 16 electoral votes. Who cares? It was already going to go to Biden, auto bailout, whatever. We weren't expecting to carry that one. We can still win the election. Well, Michigan went. Michigan went to the Democrats, brought Trump down to 290. Well, let's see. Past Michigan, he withdrew ads out of Arizona. Whoa, why Arizona? Why was he removing ads from here? Well, this was following John McCain's supposed comments President Trump made about John McCain and the McCain family coming out and in firm opposition to President Trump. So it didn't seem as if they needed to run ads. Well, it was just Arizona and Michigan, still technically winnable. Right? Well, then President Trump removed ads from Iowa and Ohio. Why? Well, he was originally playing defense. He started off on the offense, went back to playing defense, and then he withdrew his ads altogether. He said that was for the issue of rebrandishing their ads, figuring out what their center purposes with these re-election TV ads. Keep in mind, he took off these TV ads in prime time. He took his TV ads off in key Rust Belt states, including Pennsylvania, during the Democratic National Convention, a televised event with millions, tens of millions of viewers, also, a lot of viewers in battleground states as well. So the Trump removed ads during a very important week, and then following Labor Day, he has not run too many ads in some of these key states. He just slashed spending from Iowa and Ohio, cutting it down to a point where, he's still spending money, but it's 6 electoral votes. And also, it seems as if he's just picking it back up. He needs to have a constant presence in these states if he wants a realistic chance at winning here. Because if you take a look at the end of the article, he has also pulled $1 million in ads in 3 states: Minnesota, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. Now, these are 3 states that President Trump would like to target: Minnesota, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. He carried 2 out of the 3 4 years ago. But what's so appealing about Minnesota? Well, people think that being a law and order candidate may work for Donald Trump in this race. It probably won't, but let's say it does. Let's say Trump does carry Minnesota. He carried North Carolina in 2016. He carried Pennsylvania. But now, no matter how you draw it, Joe Biden is still leading in the election. Now, even if Ohio goes red, Biden still wins. Why? Well, the Trump campaign isn't spending as much money in Florida as they should be. The Republican Party there is much more organized than the Democratic Party, which is why Democrats typically struggle in this battleground state. But at the same time, when we're looking at this state, Biden is still leading. Despite the Republican Party doing much better than the Democrats at a statewide level, Joe Biden still leads in this state. Well, then you take a look at the southwestern region of the United States. Arizona is a target state, but there's no saying that it will actually go to Donald Trump on Election Day. If we look at Arizona right now, Biden is up by 3%. Trump should be doing well there, if not leading, because typically Republicans are overestimated in this state. While it may be a target state, it's going to be to no avail, because right now Biden is leading and it's likely to stay that way. And even if Trump is able to carry some of these battleground states, he's realistically not carrying Minnesota. He might carry the Rust Belt again, but if we give the Rust Belt to Trump and Florida goes blue, it's a done deal. Even with these 22 electoral votes that are black right now, even if Trump is able to retain them because he's running TV ads and actually focusing money on these states, he still loses the election. Because of the fact that Joe Biden has expanded his lead to a point where he's leading in a number of key battleground states. This is the map of where Biden is leading today, 353 based off the polls to Trump's 185. And if we look at these ads, President Trump is spending money in states he really doesn't need to. I mean, we're talking about $40 million in ads back in May and June. And then, we're looking at where the money was spent in a number of these other battleground states. It really fluctuates. The Trump campaign one day is saying, we're playing offense. We're going to focus on Minnesota and New Hampshire and Nevada. And then all of a sudden they withdraw ads from those three states. And then they move them back to states that they're worrying about, Iowa, Ohio, Georgia. Then they move them over to Arizona, some more swing states, and then they withdraw them from Arizona. They withdraw them from the Rust Belt and say, we're playing absolute defense at this point. But then they withdraw them from there. And now it's down to a point where the Trump campaign is spending money in only 3 battleground states. I mean, that is super substantial. I don't know why I kept characterizing Iowa at that point, but he's spending money in Florida, which I think is still smart. But at the same time, the argument doesn't change. Biden's still leading in Florida. So even if Florida was to go blue, even if it was to go red, Biden still wins the election because of his lead in other states. Realistically, Biden doesn't need any of these southern states. He only needs 3 states in particular, the Rust Belt. And so far, we've seen Trump spend zero money in these states. I mean, he spent money on zero money in terms of television ads. He's halted his money in the final month of the campaign season. We're almost at 30 days away, and the Trump campaign keeps making excuses. If you watched my Michigan video, you will remember that the Trump organizer in Michigan said, we're waiting until early voting starts. Well, what happens when early voting starts? Well, people usually have already made up their minds. They've requested their ballots or they're voting in person. And yes, it may help that he's spending money there at last minute, but he's the incumbent president in a state that he carried 4 years ago. He should have a presence in here all the time. And when we're looking at where Trump is actually targeting, I don't know why I originally included Iowa. I meant to talk about Iowa before because I made a video talking about how Trump removed his ads from Iowa. It should be at the top right of the screen. But even with Florida, even with Georgia and Arizona, that's 56 electoral votes. That's not going to make too much of an impact on the election when Biden is not only leading in these 3 states, he's leading in Ohio, he's leading in North Carolina, and he's leading in Arizona and Florida. The only one that could actually go to Trump if the election was held today is maybe Georgia. Because what we've seen from the Democratic Party is that they are ramping up their efforts in every way possible. Every single way possible. Because of the fact that Ruth Bader Ginsburg has passed away, the Democratic Party has realized that this election really does matter more now than ever. Because what we're seeing is money flow into the Democratic Party in levels that we have never seen before. But unfortunately for Donald Trump, we're not seeing the same type of energy. Nobody's throwing money to Trump the same way that voters are throwing money to the Democratic Party. And Trump is feeling that. He's feeling it very literally. Internet ads. I mean, we're seeing Trump spend money on things that were held for the RNC or rallies that have totaled up to, I believe he spent enough money on banners and fireworks at the RNC that could have covered 1 week of Iowa. 1 week, 7 days of constant advertising, 7 days. We have 39 days until the election. Were those 7 days really worth the fireworks? Were those 7 days really worth the banners that were flown over the RNC? Did that convince any voters? Wow, the firework display was nice. I'm going to vote for Trump now. And yes, the Democratic Party spent money on fireworks as well. But guess what? They have money to spend because they're advertising in all of the states. They're spending TV ads and internet ads in all of the states. Trump withdrawing TV ads, wavering in terms of his internet ads. The Republican Party, Lindsey Graham, the Trump campaign, all of them are practically begging for money at this point. Because the Democratic Party is severely out fundraising them. There's no way to argue that. Based off the numbers alone, the Democratic Party has raised more money. That's not a partisan statement. They have done much better in fundraising. And while their entire rhetoric may be anti-Trump, who cares? The election is literally against Trump. And when Republicans are tied to President Trump, and that's one of the reasons why their polling numbers go down, well, that's more about the presidential candidate themselves than the party that's opposing them. Because yes, the Democratic Party may have to figure out what they're doing for the midterm elections. But so far, they're looking at this election. And right now, Joe Biden and the Democratic Party are tapping into a very keen hatred for President Trump. And they're tapping into a very scared base, a very scared group of people. You know, talking about the courts with people questioning, will their rights be overturned? Will you be able to get an abortion, you know, in a week after the election? Or if, you know, Roe v. Wade is overturned, is that a real possibility in this America? Which is exactly why the Democratic Party is doing very well and why they're fundraising so well. Why all of that money, why $250+ million have entered into Act Blue in the past week alone. 1 week changed all of that. And now what we see is that Trump not only is not fundraising enough, that he's cutting ad spending because he just can't afford it. It's not an issue of, oh, we just want to win the election through internet ads. I'm not saying it's impossible for Trump to win at this point. But if he's only targeting 56 electoral votes and he's underwater in an additional, let's see, you know, if he's underwater in an additional 40 of those 56 electoral votes, are the ads really working? Question 1. And question 2, you really should be targeting some other states. Because Iowa and Ohio being withdrawn is not a show of strength. Because Trump is only up by 1 in Iowa and down 1 in Ohio. So realistically, it's not a show of strength. It's a show that they don't have the money to spend on these battleground states. And that's going to be something that's going to hurt the Trump campaign in the final 39 days of the presidential election. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord link for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2020 election predictions. If you just want to see where I think this race stands today, I'm going to be making one 30 days out. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.